Welcome to another weekly wrap-up. Lots to talk about today, so I'm just gonna get right into it. It has been a shit reading week, so let's do this. So first, I'm gonna kick off with all the Marvel comics I read. When I kind of hit a reading slump or just not enjoying what else I'm reading in terms of novels, I do tend to dive back into comics a lot more in a higher volume. So this week I read three volumes, continuing in my Marvel X-Men reading project right now. So the first one that I read is, it would help if I had my notes actually up, right? So the first one that I read was X-Force Volume 3 by Benjamin Percy. Now, X-Force tend to be this sort of like dark cover, Black Ops, mutants kind of situation going on. And that continues in this current Marvel X-Men era, and I don't like it. That's going to be a refrain that you'll hear when I go on with these X-Men comics. I don't like it. I don't like most of the character combinations, and this issue or this volume had a lot of issues that were focused mainly on Quentin Quire, who I have always disliked. And it tries its best to really humanize him a little more, give him a little more just reasons for the way that he is. And at times it kind of toes that line, it kind of reaches up to it, but for me, it could never quite cross the line into making me like Quentin Quire whatsoever. So there's that. So yeah, I didn't really have much else to say, nothing really exciting here. I think there was an issue where there's some kind of stuff going on with like cast-offs from Krakoa going off into the ocean and kind of like raising things from the subterranean deep, but then Namor shows up in a really great like 3 pages, and it was fantastic. And Namor was just like, get the fuck out of my ocean, like, you don't even know what you're doing, get out of here, I'll take care of this. And they leave, which was great. So yeah, I think I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read X-Men Volume 3 by Jonathan Hickman. This is the flagship series. This is the one that Jonathan Hickman himself is mainly writing. He is the overall story person for the overall X-Men mutants storyline going on in this, Age of X situation going on right now, but he is writing the X-Men comic. And the X-Men comic is interesting because Jonathan Hickman is a very big ideas man. And at times he takes those ideas to a point where the story itself that he's trying to tell is to the detriment of the character work. So there's lots of cool stuff, but none of it really hits for me because I don't care if you don't make me care about the mutants that I have loved my entire life, right? If the mutants that you are writing are not the mutants that I recognize, I don't care about how cool and big your story is. So, and another thing about the main X-Men series that he's writing is that it feels so fractured. There are essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of storylines that happen within the like 5 or 6 issues that are in this volume. So the first one is this issue where so Krakoa is a sentient island, and there used to be another island as well. I forgot what it's called. I want to say like Arakoa, and there are apparently mutants who like came up completely separately, evolved separately from the mutants that we know, and they're like all about hardcore war and stuff like that. And this issue is about trying to get Krakoa and the other island to see if they can merge again because they're sentient. And essentially it's really interesting because Cypher, one of the New Mutants, he actually kind of can talk to anything, any language, whether that is animal, person, sentient being, technical, he can speak any language. So he speaks for Krakoa, and he talks about how the other island has evolved so much on its own leg of evolution that it's like barely even the same language anymore. And how do you get those two very disparate islands to connect again, which is also then goes into how are we going to get the mutants that we know, Xavier's mutants that we know, to connect with these other mutants on this other island who all they know is war, and all they know is hardship and bloodshedding, and they see Xavier's mutants, the mutants that we love, as completely soft and not worth their time. So it was interesting, but it was only a single issue. The next storyline is some storyline where for some reason we're back in space with the Shi'ar, and The art was horrible. It was so bad that I didn't give a single shit about what was going on. Somebody is kidnapped. I don't know. I don't know. And for the love of God, somebody please explain to me how Storm's powers work in space and in spaceships. I love Storm, but what? So, barely anything to talk about there in the Shi'ar storyline. So the next one that took up 2 issues is the storyline with the Vault. And this, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what the Vault is. It is some secret hidden city on Earth somehow, but also not. But like, so like, and then time in the Vault goes completely differently to time on Earth. So 3 mutants, X-23 and Sync and Darman all are put into the Vault to explore it, I guess, to figure out what it is, because there are these like children of the atom that live in the Vault. I don't know. And there were 2 issues of this that kind of went into the 3 of them, their time in the Vault and their survival and what they're doing, and like decades pass for these 3 mutants in the Vault. And the only thing I liked about the storyline was Sync. We were following Sync's point of view. He had a really great emotional through arc. Like, I was really surprised at how much I really liked that storyline. And then they come back and they are, I think they die in the Vault, so they're resurrected. And Sync remembers everything, but X-23 doesn't. And I think they actually had like a romance in the Vault. And it was just kind of sweet how he kind of just accepted it. He was still in love with her, even though she didn't like remember anything about it, but he just kind of accepted it. And I found that through line, I liked everything that, I liked the emotional resonance. I liked the character work. Do I have any idea now that I've read that what the Vault is and who the children of the atom are and what they're going to play, what part they're going to play in the future? Fuck no. But Sync had a great storyline. That's all I have to say. Hickman ideas completely separate and devoid from like, I don't know, explanation. So and the last storyline in that is this storyline where, of course, there are anti-mutant people, and of course they're trying to create robots and shit to try to get rid of the mutants. So we're going back to this old villain called Nimrod, and he was like this really incredibly hard villain for the X-Men to defeat in the past. And close to the sun, out in space close to the sun, there is this like big forge where they've been building like sentinels, and I think they knew somehow that another Nimrod was being built. So Xavier and Magneto send Mystique on a mission to this forge to try to blow it up so that they can't produce any more Sentinels in Nimrod. And the way they do this and the way Mystique does it, even though it is essentially a suicide mission. Now, first of all, yeah, she can come back to life. But second of all, it's still a suicide mission. They're holding the resurrection of Mystique's wife over her head to make her do this. She has to destroy the forge so that she can come back and they will resurrect her wife, essentially, is what they imply. They don't outright say it, but they imply that. And, you know, stuff happens. Nimrod is still too powerful. Mystique kind of maybe blows up a little bit, but she doesn't really do it. She doesn't, essentially she doesn't do it. And she's resurrected, and she goes, okay, what about my wife? And Xavier goes, what about her? And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on with my X-Men? What is going on with my X-Men and my mutants? Xavier has never, like, there's the joke of, like, that Kitty Pryde, that issue where Kitty Pryde turns around and yells, Charles Xavier is a jerk. And, like, yeah, we've all come to terms with that. But he's never been this fucking diabolical. And he is diabolical. Like, with Magneto but at his right-hand side, and Charles is like, what about her? Like, what? What is going on with the X-Men? What are you doing, Hickman? I can't. I fucking can't. It just fucking, I was speechless. Yeah, okay, we're gonna move on. I think I gave that 3 stars mainly because of the Sync storyline and the Two Islands storyline. Those were interesting and are kind of laying pieces down that I find interesting. Yeah, yeah. The last X-Men comic that I read was Cable Volume 2 by Gerry Duggan. Now, Cable is a very, 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 very complicated mutant. Like, literally, I don't think anybody except the most fanatic of Cable fans could even begin to understand his history, his backstory, his timeline, because Cable is a timeline jumper, he is a time traveler, he is a dimension hopper, and he is all about clones. This current storyline is about young Cable, who at some point in the past went into the future and killed old Cable, and young Cable is the one who has been running around on Krakoa. And I don't remember why, like, he is doing this storyline, but there's this group that is kidnapping mutant babies for some kind of blood ritual, and young Cable gets like super obsessed with it. Then he realizes that the person who is leading this baby kidnapping ring is actually called Strife, who is another Cable clone, an evil Cable clone. Confusing. So young Cable has them resurrect old Cable so that the both of them can go take on Strife together and end the baby kidnapping, etc. I don't know what to say other than that, because everything else is just incredibly confusing, timey-wimey stuff. But aside from that, I kind of liked what the story did here. Other than the confusion, there was a pretty straight, like, emotional through arc for young Cable that was going on, which I liked. And, you know, for doing something with such a confusing character, I think it was somewhat successful, and it left it open-ended, although I think the actual Cable this series is over because there's no more on Marvel Unlimited. So kind of curious about where that's gonna go, but also not. The way Gerry Duggan writes Emma Frost in this Cable series, paired with Phil Noto's art, is like my favorite Emma currently in the current Marvel landscape. Like, she is just so funny, the art is amazing, and I just chef's kiss. So yeah, I gave that 3 stars. One more comic I read, this is not Marvel, this was The Closet by James Tynion IV. I really like James Tynion IV. He writes Something is Killing the Children, which is where I first found him. He's written a lot of other stuff, but he is very good at writing horror. And so this was a 3-issue series, which I didn't know when I got the graphic novel in Hoopla. And that was completely to its detriment. So this is essentially a story about a young 4-year-old boy. His parents are moving across the country, and his mom flies out to their new place, but he and his dad are taking the road trip out there, and the young boy actually sees a monster come out of the closet. And of course, his parents think it's just childish nightmares, you know, there's no monster. But it's there. It's very creepy. I have to give that to this storyline and this art. It's very creepy. Of course, like, the monster exists, but it's also a metaphor because his dad is a piece of shit. Just piece of shit white man who doesn't take any accountability for anything, for the fact that he's awful to his son, for the fact that he is the reason why his marriage is falling apart. And each issue, 3 issues, so each issue is along the way of this road trip, and he, like, essentially stops and talks to somebody about how shit his life is, while he's completely neglecting the fact that his child is genuinely terrified. When I got to the end, I was like, that's it? Like, it just kind of ends with no closure, no explanation, no nothing. Like, we're just kind of left to assume that the kid is actually seeing this monster, and we're just left to kind of infer that the monster is related to his father's neglect and all the, like, trauma that this child is, like, internalizing during this, like, turbulent time in his life. But also, it doesn't actually say anything like that. It just kind of ends, and I literally was just like, that's it. Probably one of the most disappointing things from James Tynion IV that I've read. Like, highly disappointing in terms of, like, what I know he can write and how he can write. So I think that was 2 stars. Just not much else to say about it. A very short, very unsatisfying, unfulfilling story. Moving on to the novels. The first thing that I finished this week was 5 Broken Blades by Corland. Very pretty. I really like this book. Even my husband was impressed when I was reading it, and he saw like how cool this was. Art there with all the characters. First of all, there are 6 main characters, but it's called 5 Broken Blades. That annoyed me a lot. So this is romantasy, and I kind of found that out after I bought the book. I got it for very cheap at Target, and I still wanted to give it a try because this is essentially kind of a heist story. It's about all these characters who essentially have to come together to assassinate the ruling king of their kingdom. It was fine. The writing was fine. The world building was okay. I think it was a bit much that we had perspectives for all 6 characters by the time they all come together. Just felt like it did keep the book, like it read very fast because once all 6 were in play, we started getting very short chapters as the story is moving along from all 6 of them. But it just kind of felt unsatisfying by the end because once we had all 6, I didn't really feel like there was a lot of actual proper character work being done because it is a romantasy and all 6 characters are paired off. There is a gay couple, 2 men who are paired off in one romance, and then the other 2 are male-female. I think that of all the characters, Sora, I think, was the most interesting, and I feel like this could have been a vastly different, much better book if it had focused more on Sora, if not been only about her, because she is this woman who was bought as a child, her and her sister, and along with like 100 other women by this local lord. And she was essentially raised to become sort of like a poison assassin, and all these women were like constantly being fed poison to become immune to it. And out of the 100 girls that were picked, she's the only one who survived. And so she is like this master assassin for her lord, and he holds, you know, he also has her sister, so she is trying her best to do everything that she can, you know, what he wants, so that eventually she and her sister can be free of him. And so then her story kicks off when he tells her she has to go assassinate the king. And they believe the king to be kind of godlike because he can't be murdered. But it turns out that he can be murdered, but it's only just that he has like this magical crown that he wears all the time that keeps him alive. So I liked Sora's story a lot. There's a lot of potential there. She had a lot of rage. It was really interesting. And I think the beginning, the first maybe quarter, it was a lot better than the rest of it because the first quarter slowly introduced 3 characters and their companions were added along the way. And then it was when they all met up and all 6 POVs kept going like rapidly was when things kind of like fell apart for me and I kind of just started losing interest. So I would say this is kind of found family-ish, maybe found coworker assassins, maybe I would say. Like I said, the writing was okay, it was serviceable, other than the too many POVs for me. I'm not gonna read book 2, and I don't know, it's pretty. I'll keep it on my shelves for now until I build up enough of a, you know, cute special edition shelf that I won't need this anymore to fill out the shelf. So yeah, 5 Broken Blades, solid 3 stars. I'm not upset that I read it, but also not very joyful that I read it. So yeah, wish I had something better to say, but you know, I didn't hate it, which is what happens to me with most romantasy. So there it is. Next is a DNF, and that is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Jensen. So I essentially picked this up because the Ursula K. Le Guin 2024 award shortlist came out last week or 2 weeks ago. I learned about it this week essentially, and the sequel to this was nominated. So I feel like, okay, I've had this for a couple of years, might as well finally give it a try because I want to read all the shortlist nominees, so I should read this first. Now, this is a story about a world where they learn how to travel to other universes, essentially, but people can only travel to a universe if the other universe, the other world, does not have a copy of themselves. So essentially their other counterpart has to be dead. And of course, that sort of, Micaiah Johnson follows this story thought where why would it be that a young brown woman in a world that has kind of like a utopia city, and on the outskirts is very dystopian, you know, survival of the fittest, Mad Maxy. If she's from the outskirts and she is brown, why would she be one of the most successful world hoppers? Because she can go to like something like 90% of all the worlds because she is dead in all those worlds. Why is that? So it looks at poverty, it looks at systems of privilege, it looks at all of that. So it's interrogating not time travel, universe hopping and alternate universes from a very interesting socioeconomic perspective. And I was into that at first. So I got to about 112 pages because she hops to a universe where they got word that version of her died. But then she hops and she is severely injured because it turns out she's not dead over there. She's actually alive, but she somehow survives. So I don't actually know how the laws work that way. Like, so do you go and you immediately die, or like, do you go and the transition into a universe where you're still alive? That first universe hop is what like kills you if you don't get treated in time. That was a little confusing. I'm sure maybe if I'd continued I would have gotten some answers for that. But our main character, Kara, is also dealing with the fact that she had this really toxic, horrible relationship with this man who essentially was a pimp, a domestic abuser to her. And she meets him in this other alternate universe where things are a little different. So he is not the one who is like essentially the mafia man in charge who like protects the outskirts, the slums or whatever. He's actually the younger brother, and his older brother is the one who's actually the horrible person. And it started going to a place where I was like, I don't want to read this. Like, if this is going like, and I went and I read some other reviews on Goodreads that spoiled a little bit, and it confirmed to me that I don't care about the interpersonal relationship things going on with her and this character called Nick. I just don't. Like, I kind of wanted more of the socio-political alternate universe hopping stuff. I didn't want the rest of it, if that makes sense. Like, I read like a third. I wish I had more to say. I wish I had liked this more, but I kind of just gave in and DNF'd because I didn't like where it was going personally. A lot of people have given this a lot of praise, you know, those who've actually read it. So I don't know. And I have read some reviews for the second book, and I think it's going to be more along the vein. So there's one book crossed off my Ursula Le Guin shortlist TBR before I've even put it together. So yeah, unfortunately, as much as I really wanted to like this, this was a DNF. Next, I read Sweep and Peace by Ilona Andrews, which is book 2 of the Clean Sweep series. Innkeeper Chronicles. Book 2 of the Innkeeper Chronicles. This is another urban fantasy by them. And this is a world where it's urban fantasy, paranormal, with some romance. Very, very, very tiny speck of romance. And essentially, all of the paranormal creatures are aliens. So our main character, Dina, is an innkeeper, and inns are magical, and she draws magic from the inn, so she's very powerful when she's in the inn. And vampires, werewolves are all essentially aliens. They come from other planets. So there's a very big sci-fi aspect to this. And in this book too, she is hosting this peace summit between the vampires, this other very violent warlike race, and then a merchant race of like fox people. and they all are on this one planet, and there's been like long time war over land and territory on this planet, and they're trying to make peace. So Dina is the only innkeeper who says yes, because she's desperate to get money and to get people to the inn. And so the entire story is basically a juggling act between trying to keep all three factions happy and dealing with a fourth neutral faction called the Arbiter, who is the one who is like hosting the peace talks, and his manipulations as he tries his best to try to make peace between all these people. So there was some fun stuff. There was some interesting world building, interesting socio-political stuff going on. I'm still kind of not sure about this series. Like, it reads very easy. Dina is growing on me as a character, though I still feel she's a little, like, kind of bland. But there did get to be some parts where she really got to show off exactly how strong she is as an innkeeper and the kind of power and authority she carries as an innkeeper with all these like big macho, you know, warring races, vampires and the other races. And she, you know, spoiler alert, she managed to help broker peace. So it was interesting. The werewolf from the first book, Sean, at the end of the first book, he kind of like leaves, but then he shows up here in this book, and it was fine. I don't really understand why there's a romance with them, like on Dina's behalf. Like, it's kind of explained why Sean may be like falling for her and why he may think he's in love with her, but they met for like 3 days in the first book, so I don't understand Dina's like link, not attraction, but link. What's the word? I don't know what word I'm looking for. I don't understand Dina's link to him, but Sean, I kind of understand. So the romance is okay. Like, I don't understand them as a couple together. And even so, like, there wasn't really romance. He wasn't really there a lot, even though it was treated as a big deal. Yeah, it was okay. I'm still interested in the world as a whole, especially the whole paranormal creatures or aliens aspect. So I am going to continue. Super easy, like urban fantasy is a comforting genre for me. So I am going to continue and see how I feel about it, but still kind of like, you know, mixed feelings about it, because I'm not sure about Dina as a character, and, you know, the world as a whole is cool, but also kind of meh. So not very exciting. Like I said, it's not been a great reading week for me, so I think I gave that 3 stars. Next was a DNF, and I said I was enjoying it last week, but that enjoyment rapidly stopped. I DNF'd Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I was reading this on audio, narrated by the author himself. Now, this is essentially a story in a world, future maybe, I don't know, in a world where robots and AI became so ubiquitous that essentially they're there for everything. And we follow this robot valet who at the start of the book murders his master. And from what I have learned, this book is in like 6 parts, and each part kind of like mirrors some kind of literary work of art. So the first part is like a send-up of Agatha Christie, which I found entertaining. It really kind of laid the premise out for what Tchaikovsky is exploring here in terms of like, okay, humans are kind of like out of the picture here. So how are these robots going to go along when a lot of their orders and stuff start to kind of coalesce and just cascade on themselves? So our main character, Charles, he ends up going off to diagnostics to figure out what's wrong with him, that he could have murdered his master. And part 2 is him going to diagnostics, and just more of the same of like robots who are just like, it's showing more of the world where humans are kind of like not in the picture, not sure why. And how the robots are like stuck in their tasks and in their last things they do, and they're kind of like going crazy in a robot way. I think where this lost me is that it's doing this thing where I personally, now this is a personal reason why I'm DNFing. It lost me because it's doing a thing where Charles is sort of being taken along the current of the story, and because he is a robot, he can't actually make real decisions for himself. He doesn't. I think the story is building to a point where he will essentially have agency and be able to make decisions for himself like he was human. But I don't like when stories kind of like drag the character along because it has to. And part of it also is that even though Charles isn't doing this on purpose, he is kind of doing that thing where someone goes along with other people's impressions of who they are and not disabusing any notions of who they are. So that is like a personal storytelling cliche that I very much dislike. So it kept rubbing me the wrong way, and it was just like the same thing over and over was happening, and I was only like 42% in. Like Charles, part 3, Charles makes it to this commune where humans are, and there's a lot of like clever stuff that Tchaikovsky is doing here in terms of like expanding the world and giving you tidbits on what's happening with this world and what's happening with the humans, what may have happened. But I was just getting so annoyed with following Charles as a character, which is unfortunate because the story is all about him. And once we got to this human commune, and Charles kind of just like doesn't really know what's going on, but is just trying to fulfill this task that he believed, like he just wants to be of service to humans. So he wants to go find humans to serve. He finds a human to serve, but we as the readers have all this information that we can use as humans in our real world that Charles has no idea of. And Charles is going along with stuff that he has no idea of the greater context of what is going on. Kind of like a dramatic irony. And I do not like that kind of storytelling. Not when the entire story is that kind of storytelling. I just don't. So, and I was feeling that around the like 25% mark. So by the time I got to 42%, I was just like, I'm done. Like, I can't stand this anymore. I just really don't want to keep reading this. So, unfortunately, DNF. So for Tchaikovsky, I am at 2 DNFs, 1 2-star and 1 5-star out of 4 books of his that I've read. So I'm gonna keep going on this Tchaikovsky train eventually this year. So we'll see how it goes in the future. Oh my god, so much talking. I have so much more to talk about. Okay, after 5 Broken Blades, I figure I'm already having a shit week. And maybe that is part of the problem, but I also feel like I know romantasy is just not for me. I know that. And I'm sure that I can find romantasy that I will personally like. I know that is a possibility. And that is why I take my chances. That's why I took my chance with 5 Broken Blades. That's why I took my chance with buying this very beautiful book, Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. And this was a DNF. So this is a romantasy, but it reads more like historical fantasy romantasy, essentially Viking inspired. It is Vikings, it is Norse mythology. And I think I just didn't like the setup for what is going on here. So our main character is married to this very shit piece of human. This human piece of shit who is the lord of their village, and he's very just like abusive and horrible to everybody, but they think he's like, God touched, so nobody really says anything because, he keeps them prosperous and stuff and keeps them safe. But then eventually it's found out that she has powers, so she's thought to be like this legendary type of shield maiden, and so she is sold off to someone else to marry. But they are like, I think they're like God touched in some way, like children of gods or something. I don't know. I stopped caring very early on because I think I just didn't want this kind of historical fantasy. Viking inspired fantasy sounds fun until you're actually in it and you open with a character who's being abused by her husband, and then it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And I kind of skimmed a couple of chapters ahead. I only got to like page 68, chapter 7. But I really was just like, the writing was okay. Actually, the writing was pretty decent. I take that back. The writing was actually pretty decent. But it's not a story I wanted to take. Not a story I wanted to take. Not a story I wanted to read. I wasn't interested in the main character or her future love interest or whatever was going on with this whole like story about, you know, her fate and prophecy and shit. So, unfortunately, this very beautiful book with these very beautiful foiled edges was a DNF. I don't know about you, but I've never had so many DNFs in a week in my life, especially where I did like substantial reading in each of them. The Outside by Ada Hoffman, another DNF. This is a sci-fi novel essentially about this future world-ish universe. It's sci-fi where it's ruled over by gods. I think essentially they're like AI that has gotten to the point where they are godlike, and they're humans who get like augmented to become angels by the AI. And then we have so anything that an AI can do, like portal hopping, universe hopping, stuff like that, is kind of heresy. But our main character is a scientist who creates this experiment that goes horribly wrong, kills like 2/3 of the space station that it's on, and she is then plucked up by the angels and one of the gods, and is told that she has to go find her old college advisor, who's the thing that she built she was building off work that she and her advisor had done. And her advisor essentially was working heresy, which to the gods. It's okay. It does some very interesting world building, you know, kind of like just dumps you in it, which I like. It's very, very interesting world building. The main character, Yasira, is autistic. And, you know, it's a world where autistic is recognized as an actual, you know, neurological different type of person. So it's kind of normalized, but also not. Yeah. It was okay. I was just kind of losing myself there. It was losing me as it went on. And eventually I was just like, I don't care. It's very interesting, but there's a lot of like stuff going on here where I just don't care enough to keep going and find out what's going on. So by page 96, 97, we got to a point where most of the story had been laid out and I didn't care. So I DNF'd because it's been a week of DNFs and I'm just trying to get through my physical TBR. I have too many books, so yeah. DNF. All right, shit week. So yeah, moving on to currently reading. I actually picked up Tower of Thorns by Juliet Marillier again. I actually started reading it last year. I read the first book, which was Dreamer's Pool, and I fucking loved it. It was so good. This is essentially historical fantasy, kind of light fantasy. And it's just really the story about these two characters, Blackthorn and Grim. Blackthorn is kind of like a druidish witch character, and Grim is just this big, strong, stoic man. They met when they were both in prison, and the beginning of the first book, something happens where they leave the jail, and he ends up becoming her protector. And they both have this really beautiful relationship where they're both broken, traumatized from their time, and they're in jail and their past, their own personal pasts, and they know when to talk to each other and when to leave each other alone, but also stick with each other. And they become these friends, and it's really, really lovely, even though they're both very prickly. Blackthorn is very prickly and Grim is just very stoic. So I loved Dreamer's Pool. So then I went immediately bought the other two books in the trilogy. Tower of Thorns is book 2. And I think I got about 150 pages-ish, and I kind of just put it down one day and never went back to it. So it's been like currently reading for almost a year at this point. But I just kind of wanted something that I knew I liked and would get me back and engaged. So I picked this back up. And I read about 100 pages last night. Yeah, it was last night. And so I'm at like page 248 right now. A little over halfway done, and I am enjoying it. Now, what are these stories about? Honestly, they're about Blackthorn and Grimm, and they do have like these adventures in each one. So in the first one, they come upon this noble house where something is wrong with like one of the women, and you know, there's kind of like a supernatural thing going on. In this one, they get to this woman's castle, and there's some kind of like creature in this tower that like screams all this tortured creature, and nobody can really get to it, but Blackthorn and Grimm are like kind of like asked to help. This is Galace. She's the character who asks for help, even though she has her own motives for getting this done. So, and then there's a lot of like Blackthorn and Grimm. We get to learn a lot more about their pasts and, you know, their relevant traumas, and I really like these characters. I like Blackthorn and Grimm. I really love them. I love their relationship, and it's very much continuing in the same vein of what I like. This is very lush, very realistic historical fantasy. It's like, I want to say Irish. There's some fae folk, little folk in this, and it's cozy to me. It's not cozy fantasy. I'm not saying it's cozy fantasy. I'm saying as a story to me, the writing, the way I feel when I am reading this, it feels cozy to me because it's comfortable, and I know I like her writing, and I know I like these characters, and I know I like the world that they're in. So I'm glad I picked this back up. Yes, it's mass market, but I like mass markets. So yeah, check out Dreamer's Pool. I really loved it. Like, I was really surprised last year when I picked it up how much I loved it. So, Tower of Thorns, I'm almost done with it. I probably will finish it this weekend and then pick up the third book. I don't remember what the third book is called, but yeah, hopefully I will finish this trilogy, maybe in the next month. So, Tower of Thorns, happily reading that. And what else I'm reading, I literally just started reading this today. This is Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park. Now, when I was writing my notes, I couldn't remember where the hell I found this. I thought I picked it up because it was a Booker Prize shortlist, but no, this was not translated. I thought I was reading a translated work. I started reading and I was like, there's no way this was a Korean author translated into English. So then I looked at it and I was like, no, that's not translated. So it wasn't the International Booker Prize shortlist, and it was not on the Le Guin shortlist. So I was like, where the fuck did I read this? It was a Pulitzer Prize finalist this year. That's where I found this. I cannot tell you what the fuck is going on in this book. I really can't. Essentially, it's a story about this author who doesn't really write anymore, and he is given this manuscript of this, essentially, it's sort of like a manifesto-ish of like the Korean provisional government from like the early 1900s before it was dissolved, and then eventually North Korea, South Korea. But like the manuscript is like, what if the KPG was never actually dissolved and it was still working in secret and still working for the betterment of Korea as a culture and as a country and as a strong force in the world, but from the shadows. But there's also a lot of stuff going on with the main character and his life as a Korean American man. Then there's also like a third kind of timeline-ish story thing going on that I don't recall. It's weird. It's very weird. I've only read like barely the first part, so I really can't tell you anything else about what is going on here because the structure is very interesting. So I don't really have enough of my hooks into this. I haven't really gotten enough into the meaty enough into this to really say anything about it other than I'm interested, I'm intrigued. Like literally, I'm only 60 pages in. So, yeah, picked this up because it was a 2024 Pulitzer Prize finalist, and I had no interest in the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Literature this year, nor the other finalists. So this is the one I picked up. So interesting. We will see where it goes. That is everything. Wish I had better things to say. I really don't think I went above a 3-star this week, which is kind of shocking. That hasn't happened in a very long time. So yeah, I don't know. I may go back to do some comfort reading, some comfort rereading if this continues, or I may just pause for a few days. So we'll see how it goes. I do have some video ideas, so if I don't actually read much this week because maybe I just need a break, I do have some video ideas that I can post instead of a weekly wrap up. Okay, K-pop Song of the Week. These queens just announced that they're going to be coming back in some capacity. Maybe it's just like a 15th anniversary kind of reunion kind of thing going on, whatever. But K-pop Song of the Week is To Anyone, I Am the Best. Absolute banger. If you're a K-pop fan and you don't know this song, what are you doing? Go listen to it right now. If you're not a K-pop fan, check it out. Again, it may not be to your taste, and that is cool, but if you like it, I will be happy. All right, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys next week, soon, something. Bye.